Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting series. This is What If Transmigrated in Bleach as Tsunayoshi Sawada. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 1. In my next life, I wish to be born in Namamori Town. Even Bleach has gotten a second wind. When are the Simon arc and the Curse of the Rainbow arc from Katekyo Hitman Reborn ever going to get animated? Our protagonist sighed while watching Bleach, Thousand-Year Blood War on his screen. His name was Tian Gang, though his friends usually called him Ah Gang. His biggest hobby was watching anime. Among all the series he liked, his two favorites were Katekyo Hitman Reborn and Bleach. Both anime had once ended abruptly without fully adapting their later story arcs. Now Bleach had returned with the Thousand-Year Blood War arc, while the continuation of Reborn still seemed hopelessly far away. Ah Gang absent-mindedly played with the fully awakened sky ring in his hand, feeling rather sentimental. It was a small craft item he had bought by chance from a roadside stall on his way home. The ring itself was primarily black and gold. At its center was the Vongala family crest, surrounded by the engraved words of the Vongala family. Around the crest were 6 embedded gemstones in different colors: red, blue, yellow, green, purple, and indigo, symbolizing the 6 Vongala guardians. Back when Ah Gang was younger and deeply obsessed with Reborn, he had tried to collect the complete set of rings that appeared in the anime. However, since this unlocked version of the Sky Ring didn't quite match his aesthetic preferences at the time, it ended up being the only one missing from his collection. After buying the ring at the stall, Ah Gang originally planned to rewatch Katekyo Hitman Reborn, to reminisce about his youth. But when he turned on his computer, the first thing he saw was the newest episode of Bleach. Since he loved Bleach just as much, Ah Gang immediately shouted, "Bankai!" and opened the latest episode. As for the newly bought Sky Ring, it could only be placed, along with a sigh, into the jewelry box where he kept the rest of his rings. Forget it. I'll rewatch Reborn later. No regrets about entering the Reborn fandom in this life. In my next life, I wish to be born in Namamori Town. With lingering regret about the non-existent second season of Reborn, Ah Gang closed the jewelry box. Still, his mood quickly improved. Looking at the stylish character designs of Bleach, which were still as cutting-edge as ever, he felt a surge of excitement. Yes, this was it. The aesthetic of anime characters, distinctive, stylish, cool from every angle. That was exactly why he loved both Bleach and Reborn. What Ah Gang didn't know was that at the moment he excitedly shouted, "Bankai!" the sky ring inside the jewelry box flickered faintly with a small flame. At the same time, the screen in front of him grew brighter and brighter after that shout of "Bankai!" until it gradually swallowed him whole. When Ah Gang woke up groggily, he noticed that his room seemed larger than before. The surroundings were extremely unfamiliar. Just as he was about to spring up, fragments of faint memories surfaced in his mind. There weren't any detailed scenes, only vague impressions, the layout of a home, a gentle mother, and a strong father who loved teasing him. That was all. Ah Gang roughly understood what had happened. If this wasn't a dream, then he had transmigrated into the body of a small child who had only recently learned to speak. That was why there were no clear memories. Even thinking a little made him feel drowsy. Forget it. Sleep first. "Tsuna, dinner's ready." "I'm coming, Mom!" "Mom, there are so many dishes today." "Did Dad come back from Italy?" Tsuna asked. "Talking nonsense again. Your father came home from the construction site, not Italy," his mother gently corrected while setting out his utensils. "Nana, is Tsuna spreading rumors about me again?" His father's rough voice sounded out. He wore a white tank top under work clothes and a safety helmet, completely dressed like a construction worker. "Dad, didn't you bring any Italian friends back?" Tsuna asked, peeking toward the doorway. "You brat. Where would Italians come from on a construction site? It's all burly men." His father grinned as he pinched Tsuna's cheek. "All right, hurry and take a shower. Dinner's ready," Nana said, pushing the sweat-covered father toward the bathroom. Watching his parents' backs, Tsuna's eyes flashed with a hint of regret. He had been in this world for several years already and had even reached second grade in elementary school. Yet this damned old man of his had hidden things so well that Tsuna hadn't found the slightest flaw. His gentle mother Sawada Nana, his strong father Sawada Imitsu, who often worked away from home, his own name Sawada Tsunayoshi, and the fact that he attended Namamori Elementary School. All of these made Tsuna certain that he had transmigrated into the world of Katekyo Hitman Reborn. Ever since then, Tsuna had constantly tried to probe his father in subtle ways, wondering whether he was the legendary Vangala external advisor. He had even hoped to come into contact with the Vangala early. Or maybe learn how to use the dying wolf flames in advance. The reason he kept asking whether his father had Italian friends was because Tsuna remembered that the 9th Vangala boss once visited the protagonist during his childhood in the story. But for some reason, even though Tsuna was already in second grade, the old man still hadn't appeared. In a few more years, when he entered middle school, the original plot should begin. Tsuna touched the sky ring hanging around his neck. After transmigrating, he had discovered it beneath his pillow. Originally, he thought he could ignite the dying wolf flame through determination like in the anime. But no matter how hard he tried, the ring showed no reaction at all. Of course, that made sense. This was the unlocked sky ring, clearly the same craft item he had bought before transmigrating. The real Vangala rings were still sealed at this time and didn't look like this at all. In the end, Tsuna could only keep it as a keepsake, wearing it around his neck. After all, it was the only thing that had accompanied him across worlds. Even though he couldn't ignite the dying wolf flame yet, Tsuna still believed he should prepare for future battles. So after entering elementary school, he joined the sports club, training his body to become stronger. That way, when battles eventually came, he would have a little more insurance. Over the years, Tsuna had repeatedly tried to probe his mysterious father. Yet after careful observation, that supposedly mysterious father didn't seem mysterious at all. He really did appear to be just an ordinary construction worker. The smell of sawdust and dirt on him couldn't be faked. Surely he wasn't deliberately covering himself in construction materials every time before coming home? While Tsuna was lost in thought, his father finished showering, and Nana placed all the dishes on the table. Ahem. "Before we start eating, I have something to announce," Sawada Imitsu said, clearing his throat and putting on a serious expression. "What is it?" Tsuna asked cooperatively. "Don't tell me you're taking us on a trip to Italy? Is Italy the only thing inside that head of yours?" Imitsu said irritably while ruffling Tsuna's spiky hair even more. "You're half right, though. But it's not a trip, it's a move." "Moving to Italy?" Tsuna immediately became interested. At Namamori Elementary, he hadn't seen any familiar characters from Reborn. At all. That had once made him doubt whether he had really entered that world. If they moved to Italy, maybe he could finally confirm whether this was truly the Mafia world. Not Italy. Resting his chin on his hand, Imitsu looked at Tsuna with a doting smile. "It's all because of you, kid. You're always bragging about how amazing your old man is. So to live up to your expectations, I had to work my hardest. After years of effort, the higher-ups in the company finally recognized me. According to the company's plan, I'll soon become the president of a newly established branch office. When that happens, I won't have much time to come home anymore. So I'm planning for the whole family to move there together." Imitsu puffed out his chest proudly. "Well? I lived up to your expectations. Now you're the son of a company president. Isn't that better than the advisor you keep talking about? Once I get to the new company, I'll even hire a few advisors so you can see what they're like. Tsuna was stunned. Completely stunned. For a moment, he couldn't react at all and could only turn stiffly to Nana to confirm whether this was real. It's true, Tsuna, Nana said gently while smoothing his messy hair. You don't know how much motivation you gave your father. Your father's promotion is partly thanks to you. Heh. Sawada Tsunayoshi forced an awkward laugh. No matter how he thought about it, he never imagined that his attempts to probe his father had actually motivated him to work harder, indirectly leading to his promotion. Didn't that basically confirm that his father really was just a construction worker? If that were true, then things like the Italian mafia and the Vangala family didn't exist at all? No wonder Tsuna couldn't find Sasagawa Kyoko, Sasagawa Ryohei, or Yamamoto Takashi anywhere in Namamori Elementary. There was only one explanation. This wasn't the world of Katekyo Hitman Reborn. At all. What a pity. He had originally wanted to see whether the Arcobaleno were as cute in real life as they were in the anime. Tsuna sighed softly. What's wrong, Tsuna? Is the food not to your liking? Nana asked. No, Mom. The food is great, Tsuna replied. He was just lamenting that his future as a mafia boss seemed to be drifting farther and farther away. Soon, however, Tsuna recovered his cheerful mood. Even if this wasn't the world of Reborn, it didn't seem so bad. After all, he had a gentle mother and a father who was a company president. He could just treat this as living a new life. Oh right, Dad, where are we moving? Tsuna suddenly remembered the important question, chewing on a chicken drumstick as he looked at his father. Do you even know the names of all the streets around here yet? Imitsu replied. Anywhere we move will be a new environment for you. Instead of worrying about that, you should think about saying goodbye to your classmates. Just tell me, maybe. I know the place. Tsuna mumbled with his mouth full. In truth, he wasn't that concerned. Like Imitsu said, he had never left Namamori town, so aside from Italy, moving anywhere didn't make much difference. All right then, Imitsu said. Remember this carefully. The place our family will be living from now on is called Karakura Town. Clang. The chicken drumstick fell onto the table. Tsuna's mouth hung wide open. There was no way he could forget what Karakura Town was. Wasn't that the hometown of the protagonist from the anime he had been watching before transmigrating? Could it be? Chapter 2, Where Did My Mafia Boss Script Go? Karakura Elementary School. When Sawada Tsunayoshi entered the classroom as a transfer student and saw that familiar classmate with bright orange hair, he almost couldn't keep his expression under control. That face was far too recognizable. Kurosaki Ichigo. Karakura Town. Which meant one thing: the world Tsunayoshi had transmigrated into was not the world of Katekyo Hitman Reborn. At all, it was the world of Bleach. Considering that he had been watching Bleach right before transmigrating, ending up in the Bleach universe was technically reasonable. Reasonable my ass. This was the Bleach world. Unlike the world of Reborn, where you could live safely as long as you stayed away from mafia affairs, the world of Bleach had hollows, monsters wearing white masks that devoured souls. At any moment, someone could become their prey. And Tsunayoshi was currently in Karakura Town, one of the rare spiritually dense locations in the entire Bleach universe. In other words, all sorts of supernatural incidents happened here. He was supposed to have the future mafia boss script, develop steadily, inherit the position, and become the mafia boss sooner or later. But now, he had been thrown into a world where people fought monsters. And the worst part was that ordinary humans couldn't even see those monsters. Even more terrifying than Hollows was that man known as the father of the Quincy, the lunatic who wanted to destroy the world and return the three realms to their original state. In the world of Reborn, if you weren't strong enough, the worst that could happen was losing a fight. But in the world of Bleach, if you encountered a Hollow without power, you would actually die. Tsunayoshi had no mood left to listen to the teacher introducing him to the class. His mind was already racing with one thought. How could he persuade his dad to move away from Karakura Town? Anywhere would do. As long as it wasn't Karakura Town. The rest could be left to Kurosaki Ichigo, the protagonist of this world. But then again, his father had earned this branch president position through years of hard work. Would asking him to leave now be too heartless? While thinking this, Tsunayoshi followed the teacher's instructions and walked toward the empty seat at the back of the classroom. And of course, the seat next to him belonged to the protagonist himself, Kurosaki Ichigo. At this age, Ichigo was like a little sun, bright and cheerful. The moment he saw Tsunayoshi, he greeted him with a big smile and extended his hand. "Hi, I'm Kurosaki Ichigo. Nice to meet you." "Oh, hello." Tsunayoshi snapped back to reality and shook his hand. "I'm Sawada Tsunayoshi." "I know. The teacher just introduced you." Tsunayoshi barely heard the rest, because a voice suddenly echoed inside his mind. Detecting character from the Bleach world. Copying character talent. Talent copy complete. Converting talent ability. Talent ability converted into source power. Talent conversion complete. Have a pleasant journey. Goodbye. Tears welled up in Tsunayoshi's eyes. After all these years, it had finally appeared. He had always fantasized about having a unique ability after transmigrating. But nothing ever came. He couldn't ignite dying wolf flames like in Reborn. Either. That was why the moment he saw Ichigo earlier, his first thought had been running away from Karakura Town. But now, his cheat had finally arrived. Ichigo's talent. In the Bleach world, Ichigo was the one person who possessed the greatest mixture of powers. His talent was unquestionably monstrous. "Hey, Ichigo! Why are you still holding the new student's hand?" A clear female voice suddenly rang out. The next moment, the girls separated their hands, and naturally grabbed Tsunayoshi's instead. "Hi. I'm Arisawa Tatsuki. Nice to meet you." She was a somewhat tomboyish girl with an adorable face and short, neat hair that made her look energetic and capable. "Tatsuki, that's not what I..." Ichigo tried to explain, but Tatsuki cut him off. "Alright, class is starting." Tsunayoshi returned to his seat. Beside him was Kurosaki Ichigo. And sitting in front of him was Arisawa Tatsuki. Arisawa Tatsuki. Tsunayoshi remembered her. She was one of Ichigo's childhood friends. The two had known each other since they were little and had always been very close. But after Ichigo's mother died, Ichigo gradually became more withdrawn, and their relationship grew distant. Even so, they remained classmates and friends all the way through high school. Thinking about Ichigo's mother, Kurosaki Masaki, Tsunayoshi quickly ran through the Bleach timeline in his head. No matter how he thought about it, the timeline he had previously memorized for the Reborn world was now completely useless. Masaki had died because of Yawacha's Oswallen. As a Quincy, Masaki lost all her powers when Yawach reclaimed them. At that exact moment, she encountered a hollow. That was why she died. In the story, Ichigo became a substitute Shinigami in high school. 3 years later came the 1,000-year Blood War. According to the Quincy legend, the sealed Quincy king would regain his heartbeat after 900 years, regain his mind after 90 years, regain his power after 9 years. Based on that timeline, Yawacha's Oswallen occurred 6 years before the start of the story, when Ichigo was in 3rd grade. But right now, Ichigo had just entered 2nd grade. Which meant, in 1 year, Ichigo would lose his mother. Thinking about this, Tsunayoshi frantically called out to the system in his mind. But no matter how many times he tried, the system never responded. Only a semi-transparent interface floated before his eyes. The interface had 5 columns. Name, Sawada Tsunayoshi. Shinigami. Hollow. Quincy. Fullbring. But the last 4 categories were blacked out, as if something had erased them. There was bad news and good news. The bad news. The system seemed to have disappeared. Even when Tsunayoshi secretly tried calling it in the restroom during break, there was no response. The good news. Before disappearing, the system had copied the strongest talent in the Bleach world for him. He possessed potential for all 4 powers: Shinigami, Hollow, Quincy, Full Bring. Looking at his talent interface, Tsunayoshi glanced at Arisawa Tatsuki, who sat in front of him. If he remembered correctly, the system had copied the talent of the first Bleach character he encountered. If the person who shook his hand earlier had been Tatsuki instead of Ichigo, then wouldn't the system have copied Tatsuki's talent instead? Tatsuki's talent wasn't bad. Later in the story, due to Ichigo's influence, she could even see spirits and Shinigami. But by the later arcs of Bleach, she had basically disappeared from the spotlight. Lost in these thoughts, the school day soon ended. Huh! Sawada, why did he run off so fast? Tatsuki asked while watching Tsunayoshi rush out of the classroom. Ichigo, where are you going after school? Want to train at the dojo? Tatsuki had originally planned to spend some time getting to know the new transfer student. But Tsunayoshi ran off the moment school ended. Her family ran a karate dojo, and Ichigo had often sparred with her there, usually ending up getting beaten. This time was no different. The cheerful Ichigo hadn't yet become the withdrawn person he would later be, so he easily agreed. If nothing unexpected happened, he would probably get beaten by Tatsuki again. Meanwhile, Tsunayoshi hurried home. Along the way, he tried his best not to look around, his heart pounding nervously. When he arrived home, he didn't even greet his mother, and immediately locked himself in his room. After making up a simple excuse to send his worried mother away, Tsunayoshi finally forced himself to calm down. He recalled what he had seen on the way home. 3 wandering souls. Just on the short walk back, he had already seen 3 spirits wandering the streets. As someone who firmly believed in materialism in his previous life, the sight had terrified him. Fortunately, knowing this was the world of Bleach helped him calm down. Only then did Tsunayoshi start studying his talent interface seriously. At school, he had already thought about his future path. According to the interface, he possessed talent for 4 power systems, meaning he could theoretically train in any of them. But in reality, his choices were limited. Both Shinigami training and Quincy techniques required someone to teach you. And Tsunayoshi didn't believe those old veterans would trust a little kid claiming to have talent. Nor did he want to deal with danger without preparation of his own. Among the remaining options, Hollow Power was extremely unstable in the original story. Trying to awaken it without guidance could easily cost him his life. That left only one option: Full Bring. Tsunayoshi vaguely remembered that Full Bring involved manipulating the souls within matter, controlling objects through their spiritual essence. By using Full Bring, one could use surrounding objects as mediums and exert abilities that exceeded normal physical limits. Full Bring was said to be a power born from love. Only objects you deeply cherish could have their souls drawn out, controlled, and reshaped, forming your unique Full Bring ability. Judging by the fact that he could already see spirits, Tsunayoshi must possess some Ryatsu. He poured himself a glass of water and tried imitating how Jinjo Kugo had taught Ichigo in the story. He attempted to use Reisher to control the soul within the water. Tsunayoshi held the glass with both hands. Tiny particles of light flowed from his hands into the cup. Those should be Reisher. It didn't seem that difficult. He rotated the Reisher particles, using them as a bridge to influence the unfamiliar force inside the water. The soul of the water. Gradually, the water in the glass began to form a spiraling vortex. He succeeded. He had already grasped the basics of Full Bring. Leaning over the table, Tsunayoshi watched the swirling water. But he knew this glass of water wasn't something he loved deeply. So what object did he truly cherish? A silver necklace slipped from his neck as he moved. A ring fell onto the table. It was the sky ring he had always carried as a keepsake. If he had to name something he truly cherished, this ring absolutely qualified. Tsunayoshi clenched the sky ring in his palm and tried guiding the soul within it the same way he had with the water. Deep down, he felt a surge of excitement. In the world of Reborn, this ring was just an ordinary craft item. But here, this was the world of Bleach. And Fullbring could draw out the soul residing within objects. It could transform that soul into power belonging to Sawada Tsunayoshi. So, ignite. Dying will flame. Chapter 3 Hope in the Rain. At a street corner in Karakura town, Sawada Tsunayoshi waved with a smile as he said goodbye to the spirit in front of him. It had been over a year since he moved to Karakura town. During that time, Tsunayoshi had completely mastered his Fullbring. His daily routine had become simple. Attend school and sleep through classes during the day. Hunt hollows in the evening. And spend his free time hanging out with Tatsuki and Ichigo. The three of them often visited one another's homes. Through this, Tsunayoshi got to know the Kurosaki family. There was Kurosaki Isshin, who had lost his Shinigami powers. Kurosaki Masaki, a Quincy. And Ichigo's two younger sisters, Yuzu and Karen. Tsunayoshi had once considered asking Masaki to teach him Quincy techniques. But his Fullbring training had been at a crucial stage at the time, so he temporarily set that idea aside. As for Tatsuki's home, there wasn't much to say. Inside her family's karate dojo, the three kids constantly sparred with each other. Because Tsunayoshi possessed the power of Fullbring, he usually came out on top in their fights. Over time, Tsunayoshi began to notice that the way Tatsuki looked at him carried a hint of something unusual. When Tsunayoshi first started training his Fullbring, he once suggested to his mother that they move away from Karakura town. That was the first time he had ever seen an expression on his mother's face that wasn't gentle. Sawada Nana firmly rejected his proposal. Rather than dragging their father down, she said they should support Imitsu while he worked hard outside the home. After talking with his mother, Tsunayoshi realized that their family wouldn't be leaving Karakura town anytime soon. Since that was the case, he would have to reduce the threat to his family as much as possible. From that moment onward, Tsunayoshi began hunting hollows. His Fullbring was rather unusual, it seemed to come with built-in experience. Tsunayoshi could conveniently use hollows as practice targets to refine his abilities. Karakura town truly lived up to its reputation as a spiritually dense area. Hollow attacks occurred frequently. Tsunayoshi had no idea which Shinigami from the Soul Society was stationed here at the time, but the hollows never seemed to run out. For Tsunayoshi, however, that simply meant plenty of combat opportunities. During his hunts, he also encountered many wandering souls who still lingered in the human world. Although Tsunayoshi wasn't a Shinigami and couldn't perform Kanso, soul burial, for them, he would try his best to talk with those spirits and persuade them to ascend to the Soul Society on their own. Not a Shinigami, yet performing the duties of one. That was how Tsunayoshi tirelessly spent his days. Over the past year, he had also thoroughly familiarized himself with the geography of Karakura town. He had even explored the surrounding areas. And eventually, he found the place he had been searching for. The riverbank from the anime. The very place where Kurosaki Masaki would one day be attacked. After spending so much time with the Kurosaki family, Tsunayoshi had grown fond of every one of them. As for the cheerful and warm Aunt Masaki, Tsunayoshi wanted to save her, if he possibly could. So he had tried to find the hollow known as Grand Fissure in advance, and eliminate it. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. That hollow was a slippery veteran. Even the Soul Society had failed to capture it. There was no way it would remain in one place for long. With no other choice, Tsunayoshi adopted a strategy of constant vigilance. He remembered that the day of Yawacha's Oswalin was known as everything but the rain. That was the day Masaki died. For Ichigo and Isshin, the day when their world became nothing but endless rain and sorrow. With only that fragment of information, Tsunayoshi found an excuse to join the school's meteorology club, where he specifically recorded rainy days. Whenever heavy rain fell, Tsunayoshi would immediately go out. Because of this, Nana repeatedly tried to persuade him to quit what she considered a dangerous club activity. After failing to convince him, she could only prepare the best reflective raincoat she could find and repeatedly remind him to stay safe before letting him leave. Tsunayoshi pushed open the front door and returned home. It was currently summer vacation, meaning he could devote nearly the entire day to hunting hollows. After helping two spirits pass on earlier, he had returned home to rest. "You're back? Club activities finished?" Nana asked. "Yeah. There hasn't been any rain lately, so there's nothing for me to do." Before Tsunayoshi could finish speaking, an alert suddenly sounded from the television. "Sudden heavy rainfall warning in Karakura town. Residents are advised to stay safe." Tsunayoshi's expression changed instantly. A terrible premonition surged through his chest. "Mom, I've got something to take care of." He grabbed the raincoat hanging by the door and rushed outside. "Leave dinner for me. Be careful. Come back early," Nana called after him. Just as he stepped outside, raindrops began falling from the sky. Within moments, the rain began to intensify. Tsunayoshi quickly turned into a nearby alley. He had done this countless times before. No one would notice him here. A flash of green light appeared beneath his feet. Propelled by that light, he leapt high into the air, using the curtain of rain to conceal himself as he soared above Karakura town. The ability Tsunayoshi used was called Bring a Light. By condensing raysure beneath his feet, he created a temporary foothold in midair. Stepping on that foothold allowed him to launch himself with explosive force, moving primarily through powerful leaps. Whenever he used it, the concentrated raysure emitted a faint green glow, making the technique somewhat recognizable. As Tsunayoshi bounded rapidly across the sky, he silently prayed, "Please don't let today be the day of Oswalin. And if it is, at least let him arrive in time." At the riverbank Tsunayoshi was racing toward. Kurosaki Masaki had already confronted the hollow known as Grand Fisher. The creature had 4 limbs and a body covered in coarse brown fur. From its grotesque white mask extended a whip-like appendage. This organ allowed it to disguise itself as a human. Grand Fisher used that ability to lure victims with high spiritual power. Just like its name suggested, this hollow was a fisherman. It relied almost entirely on its baiting tricks and escape skills. Its actual combat ability was mediocre. Moments earlier, it had disguised itself as a girl standing by the river. Kind-hearted Ichigo had mistaken it for someone about to jump into the water and rushed over to help. That was when the hollow revealed its true form and attacked. Naturally, Masaki, as a Quincy, stepped in front of her son. As a former pure-blood Quincy, Masaki's mastery of both blood veine and blood artery far surpassed that of ordinary Quincy. Against a hollow like this, she had nothing to fear. In fact, whether the creature could survive even one exchange with her was questionable. Blue light began to glow along Masaki's arm. The light spread like veins across her forearm. Blood veine. The Quincy defensive technique. Meanwhile, Grand Fisher knew none of this. Seeing its prey standing before it, the hollow leapt forward with its claws raised high. To it, the mother and son with such high spiritual power were simply a perfect meal. Masaki raised her forearm defensively. The moment the hollow entered close range, she would fire a Heilig file and obliterate it at point-blank range. This strategy had worked countless times before. It was even how she first met Kurosaki Ishin years ago. Back then, however, her plan had failed. That hollow had been far stronger than expected. It broke through her blood veine and injured her, infecting her with hollow poison and ending her status as a pure-blood Quincy. But this time, Masaki was confident. Judging by its Ryatsu, this hollow was nowhere near her level. Her plan would succeed. Or so she thought. Suddenly, Masaki realized something was wrong. Her body wouldn't respond. The power inside her was rapidly fading. The raysure around her refused to obey. Panic flooded her heart. For a Quincy, Being unable to control Reisher meant losing all combat ability. And the hollow had already reached them. In desperation, Masaki turned and wrapped her arms around Ichigo, shielding him with her own body. This was the final instinct of a mother. As for Ichigo, he had never witnessed anything like this before. The terrifying appearance of the hollow, and the overwhelming pressure of its reiatsu froze him in place. He couldn't move at all. Masaki could only cover his eyes. At the very least, she didn't want her son to see the moment she died. Yes. She had already given up. The Reisher in her body was disappearing faster and faster. She didn't know what was happening. All she knew was that she and her son were about to die here. Masaki closed her eyes and prayed. Prayed that the hollow would spare Ichigo. Prayed for a miracle. A whistling sound suddenly tore through the rain. The death that should have arrived didn't. Masaki turned her head in shock. A massive red glowing arrow had pierced through Grand Fisher's claw. The hollow howled in pain and tried to flee. Grand Fisher couldn't understand what kind of attack this was. Its defenses had been completely useless. The arrow had pierced through it like tofu. True to its nature as a hollow specialized in baiting an escape, Grand Fisher didn't hesitate. Just from that single attack, it knew it couldn't win. It didn't even bother looking for its attacker. It immediately turned to run. 3 more whistling sounds cut through the air. 3 arrows struck its limbs in succession. The hollow was pinned firmly to the ground. Grun file mechanism arrows. Rapidly fired anchoring arrows wrapped in spiraling red flames, designed to immobilize enemies. Now that the threat had stopped moving, Masaki looked behind her. On the bridge stood a small figure. The silhouette looked strangely familiar. But what drew Masaki's attention most was the massive bow in his hands, almost as tall as he was. The bow's frame resembled white bone, while its string was formed from crimson energy. There was even a guard attached to it, decorated with faint red patterns. A Quincy? The thought had just crossed her mind, when the figure shouted, "Get down!" Without hesitation, Masaki pulled Ichigo down to the ground. In the next moment, a millstone-sized arrow of blazing red fire shot over their heads. From its sharp spear-like tip, one could just barely tell it was an arrow. The crimson projectile tore through the rainstorm. Unstoppable. It slammed directly into the immobilized Grand Fisher, piercing straight through it. The raging flames consumed the hollow's body completely, reducing it back into Reisher scattered across heaven and earth. Scarlet Dragon Tornado Arrow. Chapter 4. The Oswallen of the Mixed Blood. Using Bringer Light, Sawada Tsunayoshi rapidly leapt through the air and landed beside Masaki. "Aunt Masaki, are you alright?" "We're fine. Thank you, Tsunayoshi," Masaki replied, already returning to her usual cheerful demeanor now that the danger had passed. "Ichigo just fainted from the shock." Tsunayoshi crouched down and poked Ichigo's soft, bouncy cheek. Normally, although Ichigo was kind-hearted, if someone dared to do something like that, he would immediately retaliate with a flying kick and the two would end up wrestling on the ground. Masaki looked at the huge bow in Tsunayoshi's hands, hesitating as if she wanted to ask something. Now that she could observe it up close, she finally saw its details clearly. The guard on the bow had a red ornament with a peculiar emblem. Inside it was a large Roman numeral I. It was obviously a bow. But no matter how she looked at it, it didn't resemble the bows used by Quincy. Quincy spirit bows were always composed of blue Reisher constructs, yet this longbow burned with red flames. "Tsunayoshi, are you a Quincy?" Masaki finally asked. "Oh? You mean this?" Tsunayoshi stopped teasing Ichigo and pulled the bow back against his chest. "This is my full bring ability." What Masaki couldn't see was the red gem on the sky ring beneath his clothes flickering briefly. Full bring? Masaki had no idea what that ability was. But something else suddenly clicked. "So the Reiatsu that's been active around Karakura town recently, that was you." She relaxed completely and sat down on the ground. For nearly a year, she and Isshin had sensed a mysterious Ryatsu appearing in Karakura town. But since that Ryatsu had never done anything malicious, and had even been destroying hollows and protecting the town, they assumed it belonged to a newly stationed Shinigami. They never expected the source to beat Tsunayoshi. That was a relief. After all, Tsunayoshi often visited the Kurosaki residence. Masaki trusted him. As for Tsunayoshi's Fullbring, the bow was only one of his abilities. Its name was Ji's Bow, the weapon of the Vangala Primo's Storm Guardian. Tsunayoshi's Fullbring allowed him to replicate the weapons of the Vangala Primo and his guardians. Thanks to the 6 differently colored gems embedded in the unlocked sky ring, Tsunayoshi could obtain the weapon of the corresponding guardian simply by calling its name. Meanwhile, the Vangala crest in the center of the ring could transform into the equipment of the first Vangala boss. Fortunately, Tsunayoshi's Fullbring also granted him basic proficiency with each weapon. Otherwise, no matter how talented he was, mastering the weapons of 7 different people within just over a year would have been impossible. Especially the bizarre ones. Yes. He was definitely talking about Alad's handcuffs. And Masaki, let me take you and Ichigo home first, Tsunayoshi said as he lifted Ichigo onto his back. The rain is getting heavier. All right. Let's go home. Masaki struggled to stand and tried to take Ichigo from him. But her arms refused to cooperate. Instead, she nearly dropped him. I'll carry him, and Masaki. It's no big deal. With his current physical condition, carrying someone wasn't difficult at all. Thank you, Tsunayoshi. A strange emptiness continued spreading through Masaki's body. Not only could she no longer control Reisher, she was starting to lose even her physical strength. With Tsunayoshi's help, they slowly made their way back toward the Kurosaki residence. Click. The Kurosaki front door opened. Isshin, who had been anxiously waiting at home, rushed to the entrance. What he saw was the 3 of them completely soaked by rain. Ichigo was unconscious on Tsunayoshi's back, and Masaki was leaning heavily against him. Masaki? Isshin hurried over, helping Tsunayoshi support them and guiding everyone into the living room. He immediately began rushing around in a panic. First, he dried Ichigo off and changed his clothes. Then he helped Masaki as well. While doing so, Isshin quickly noticed that Masaki's condition seemed unusually weak. Fortunately, their younger daughters had already fallen asleep. Ichigo was unconscious. So Isshin managed to settle everything without too much trouble. As for Tsunayoshi, thanks to the raincoat Nana prepared for him, he simply removed it and was perfectly fine. At the moment, he was casually drinking milk he had taken from the Kurosaki refrigerator. Thank you so much, Tsunayoshi, Isshin said seriously, grabbing his hand. Masaki had already explained everything. Just thinking about it made Isshin shudder. He had almost lost his wife. Since he had lost his Shinigami powers, even though he sensed both the Hollow's Ryatsu and Masaki's Ryatsu earlier, he couldn't do anything. All he could do was trust that Masaki would handle it. We're friends, aren't we? Tsunayoshi said with a bright smile. That's right. Tsunayoshi will always be one of the Kurosaki family's best friends, Isshin replied, rubbing his head. Oh, right, Uncle Isshin, Tsunayoshi added. Could you call my mom? I'll head home a bit later. Got it. Isshin didn't question Tsunayoshi too much. Instead, he called Sawada Nana, assuring her that Tsunayoshi was playing at their house and that he would send him home later. After everything settled down, the 3 of them sat in the living room. Tsunayoshi continued sipping milk. Masaki, why did you suddenly lose your power? Isshin asked with concern. I don't know, Masaki replied, shaking her head. If I had even a little strength left, that hollow wouldn't have been able to show off like that. That was Oswallen, Tsunayoshi suddenly said, putting down his milk. Oswallen, an ability used by the father of the Quincy. He can reclaim the power of every Quincy whose bloodline is considered impure. That's impossible. Isshin frowned. I've never heard of such a thing, Masaki added. And I was one of the few pure-blood Quincy. Aunt Masaki, you were injured before, weren't you? Tsunayoshi said. He was referring to her bait and counterattack fighting style. The power of a hollow is poison to Quincy. From the moment you were injured by one, you were no longer a pure-blood Quincy. Even if what you say is true, Ishin asked, narrowing his eyes. How do you know all of this? Even Masaki herself didn't know this information. We're friends, aren't we? Tsunayoshi replied casually. Besides, because of Ichigo, I've spent plenty of time wandering around in my raincoat. He pointed at the raincoat hanging by the door. Ishin gave him a long, thoughtful look. Someone born with knowledge. Could such a person really exist? But Ishin didn't dwell on it. Tsunayoshi, he said. Tell us everything you know. According to the stories, Tsunayoshi continued, all Quincy carry the blood of their ancestor. The Quincy progenitor possesses the power to share and reclaim abilities. He distributes fragments of power to Quincy, and later retrieves them. It's basically like predatory loan. He plants the seed of power inside you, and once it matures, he takes it back. The process of reclaiming that power is called Oswallen. This time, the Quincy ancestor used it to recover his strength from all mixed-blood Quincy. Aunt Masaki was simply caught within that range. As for those affected, the results vary. Those with strong bodies merely lose their powers, like you. But weaker Quincy, they may die immediately. After finishing, Tsunayoshi let out a long breath and resumed drinking his milk. The information he revealed was simply too shocking. The Kurosaki couple took a while to recover. Wait, mixed-blood Quincy can die from Oswallen? Masaki asked urgently, leaning forward over the table. Yes, Tsunayoshi replied. If nothing unexpected happens after this Oswallen, only pure-blood Quincy will remain. Well, except for one freakishly talented exception. Ishin, I need to go out, Masaki suddenly said. With your condition? Ishin protested. Before I met you, I lived with the Ishida family, she said quietly. There are many mixed-blood Quincy there. I might not be able to help them, but at the very least, I want to see my friends one last time. She could already imagine the tragedy that awaited the Ishida residents after this Oswallen. I'll go with you. No. Masaki shook her head. The children are still young. Ichigo will need you. Then she knelt in front of Tsunayoshi. Tsunayoshi, could I ask one more favor? Use your full bring to take me there. She still remembered how he had leapt through the air with bringer light earlier. He hadn't used it on the way back because carrying two people would have been difficult for someone his size. The Ishida family? Tsunayoshi asked deliberately. There are a lot of Quincy there? Yes, Masaki nodded. You can even meet a pure-blood Quincy. In that case, can I make one request? Tsunayoshi said. I want to become the disciple of a pure-blood Quincy. He had thought this through carefully. Right now, his system interface only had full bring unlocked. To unlock the other power systems, he needed to interact with the relevant characters. The only person connected to Shinigami around him was Ishin. But Ishin had completely lost his Shinigami powers. He could barely even see spirits. Teaching Tsunayoshi to become a Shinigami was impossible. On the other hand, Ishida Ryukin, known as the last pure-blood Quincy, was a perfect candidate. And since Masaki already knew him, asking for a favor shouldn't be too difficult. A Quincy? Masaki smiled. That's not something just anyone can learn. But I can talk to Ryukin for you. Whether he agrees or not, though, I can't guarantee. That's enough, Tsunayoshi said. Let's go. He walked toward the door and grabbed his raincoat. Seeing this, Ishin hurried to the storage room and brought out a raincoat for Masaki as well. Moments later, Tsunayoshi stepped onto bringer light, carrying Masaki on his back. Guided by her directions, he leapt through the rain toward the Ishida residence. Chapter 5: Lenses that see through illusions. From a distance, Sawada Tsunayoshi could already see the Ishida estate. The mansion looked more like a manor, estate, than a house, impossible to miss. Tsunayoshi no longer needed Masaki to guide him and headed straight toward it. As soon as he set Masaki down, a foreign Ryatsu appeared before them. The manor gate opened. A tall, silver-haired man stepped out. "Ryukin, I'm back," Masaki called out with a smile as she ran toward him, though she began gasping for breath after only a few steps. Ishida Ryukin quickly supported her. "Why are you so weak?" he asked, concern in his voice. "Where's Kurosaki-ishin? And who is this kid?" "Forget that for now." "Kane. How is Kane?" Masaki asked anxiously. Back when she lived with the Ishida family, Kane had been one of her closest friends, and the first person who respected her decision to be with Ishin. That was why Masaki had rushed here tonight. Ryukin's expression changed. "How do you know about Kane?" "It's Oswalin," Masaki said immediately. "The Oswalin of the Quincy progenitor." Her words triggered Ryukin's memory. His father Soken's library contained many ancient Quincy records, including mentions of the Quincy progenitor. Ryukin suddenly felt a wave of regret. Because of his strained relationship with his father, he had never taken much interest in Quincy history. "This Oswalin targets mixed-blood Quincy," Masaki continued urgently. "Those with weaker bodies may die immediately. Take me to Kane." "Understood." Though he didn't know whether Masaki could solve the problem, Ryukin chose to trust her. As he turned around, however, his gaze briefly swept over Tsunayoshi. Masaki noticed the subtle movement. Having grown up together, she knew exactly what Ryukin was thinking. He was still wary of Tsunayoshi. "I was hit by Oswalin too," Masaki quickly added. "Tsunayoshi saved me. He knows about Oswalin." Trusting Masaki's judgment, Ryukin said nothing further. "Come along then, kid." Following Ryukin through the manor, the three walked down a long corridor until they reached the innermost room. Inside was a simply furnished bedroom. A long-haired woman lay on the bed. Beside her sat a boy around Tsunayoshi's age, tears streaming down his face. "Yuryu, don't cry. Mommy is fine." Even from her voice alone, one could hear how weak she was. As soon as the door opened, Masaki suddenly found the strength to stagger forward. "Kane, you?" "Masaki. Why are you here?" asked Ishida Kane, her already pale face now almost ghostly against her long black hair. "How are you feeling?" Masaki asked, leaning over the bed. "I'm fine," Kane said gently, trying to reassure her just as she had reassured her son. "I suddenly lost some strength, but I'll recover after resting." "How could it be nothing?" Masaki hesitated and glanced at Ishida Yuryu. Kane instantly understood. "Yuryu," she said softly, "go to bed first. Mommy will chat with Aunt Masaki for a bit." Yuryu opened his mouth to protest. "Yuryu," Ryukin said coldly, "go to your room." His father's stern voice left no room for argument. Yuryu fell silent. Reluctantly, he walked toward the door. As he passed Tsunayoshi, he glanced at him with surprise. Why was a stranger his age here? But under his father's authority, he had no choice but to leave. The door closed behind him. Only then did Masaki speak seriously. "It's Oswalin. Not just you, I was hit too. I can't use my powers at all." She tried to gather Reisher, but the moment the Reisher veins began forming along her arm, they collapsed. She had lost control of Reisher entirely. "Masaki," Ryukin said, stepping closer, "how did you overcome the weakness afterward?" He wanted Kane to get out of bed, to return to normal life. "It wasn't that I overcame it," Masaki replied. "This is just how my body reacted. Tsunayoshi said this Oswalin targets mixed-blood Quincy. Some may even die." She suddenly noticed something strange. Ryukin didn't look surprised. "Ryukin? You knew?" "Yes," he said quietly. "My mother passed away earlier tonight." His expression turned icy. That was why he had been so desperate to find a way to help Kane. He feared losing her as well. What? But your mother was a pure-blood Quincy! Kane exclaimed. She was attacked by a hollow when she was young, Ryukin said. When I examined the body, I found the scar on her leg. Unlike Kane, his mother hadn't survived Oswalin at all. She had died instantly. Masaki fell silent. Then suddenly she turned to the small figure standing nearby. Tsunayoshi! You know about Oswalin. Is there any way to help Kane recover? She quickly lowered her expectations. Not restore her powers, just let her live normally like me. Ryukin also turned his attention to the child. To be honest, if Masaki hadn't insisted, he wouldn't even have allowed this kid inside his home, let alone into his bedroom. The next moment, Tsunayoshi's answer hit him like ice water. There isn't, he said calmly. After Oswalin, mixed-blood Quincy not only lose their powers, they also develop a substance called still silver inside their bodies. Depending on the individual, some die immediately. Others survive, but the still silver eventually gathers near the heart, forming a silver blood clot that kills them. With Aunt Kane's condition, if she takes good care of herself, she might have a few months left. You brat, what did you just say? Ryukin's eyes flashed coldly. A Heilig file formed in his hand. The spiritual arrow hummed with lethal energy. Tsunayoshi's words had struck directly at Ryukin's deepest wounds. A flash of green light. Tsunayoshi instantly hid behind Masaki. Aunt Masaki! This silver-haired uncle is scary! Masaki nearly face-bombed. Of course Ryukin would explode. Tsunayoshi had stepped on every emotional landmine possible. Masaki grabbed Tsunayoshi by the collar and pulled him forward. Tsunayoshi, tell me honestly, how long do I have left? She had already accepted the possibility. According to Tsunayoshi, her condition was better than Kane's. If her life was limited, she needed time to prepare for her family. Tsunayoshi looked away toward the door. I don't know. Not if I hadn't appeared. Masaki's pupils shrank. She immediately understood. If Tsunayoshi hadn't shown up tonight, she would have died after losing her powers. Killed by that hollow. Kane's fate was similar. Without Tsunayoshi's involvement, Ryukin would eventually fail to save her. She would die from the silver blood clot. But if Tsunayoshi had appeared, could the outcome change? Masaki asked gently. Tsunayoshi, do you have a way to stop Kane from dying from the silver clot? Her request had become even simpler. She only wanted Kane to live. Hearing this, Ryukin lowered his bow. He rubbed his forehead. A man who normally remained calm under any circumstance had completely lost his composure today. Well, Tsunayoshi said casually, why do you think I suggested apprenticing under this grumpy uncle in the first place? Ryukin's temple twitched again. But he stayed silent. Ryukin, I'll accept it on your behalf, Masaki said quickly. Tsunayoshi, please help Kane. That's easy, Tsunayoshi said. If still silver exists inside the body, then just remove it before it forms a clot. Angiography, Ryukin muttered immediately. As a medical expert, he already understood the idea. Probably not that simple, Tsunayoshi replied. If X-rays could solve it, you would have already tried. Ryukin frowned. Then what exactly are you suggesting? Well, Tsunayoshi said, I have something more convenient than medical imaging. Something that can see through every illusion and reveal the truth. A green light flashed from his chest. Demon Spade's Demon Lens. 3 floating monocles appeared over Tsunayoshi's left eye. Each lens had silver spikes and tiny white wings. This was the weapon of the first Vangala Mist Guardian, Demon Spade. Legend said anyone stared at through the demon lens would be cursed, and their body would float in the sea the next day. Tsunayoshi suspected the truth was simpler. Demon Spade probably used the mirror to cast powerful illusions. For Tsunayoshi, however, the lens didn't strengthen illusions much. Its true ability was seeing through illusions. When the three lenses overlapped and were infused with Ryatsu, Tsunayoshi could see the truth hidden beneath all appearances. He turned his gaze toward Kane. Instantly, her spiritual pathways became visible. Within them were three tiny silver lights. Then he looked at Masaki. She had them too. 5 smaller ones, scattered across her limbs and abdomen. Aunt Kane has 3 points of still silver, Tsunayoshi explained. 1 in the chest, 1 in the right arm, and 1 in the left leg. Aunt Masaki has 5, spread across her limbs and abdomen. They're moving slowly. My guess is that once they gather near the heart, the silver clot forms. And the reason Aunt Masaki is healthier is because her still silver is more spread out. I see. Masaki nodded slowly. Then suddenly, she grabbed Tsunayoshi's cheek. Hey! Brat! Did that ability just see things it shouldn't have? I'll tell Nana about this. Tsunayoshi sighed. Of all things, that was her concern. Relax, he protested. The demon lens doesn't care about bodies. What I see are spiritual structures, racial pathways. And since you've lost your powers, the clearest thing in your bodies is the still silver containing trace racial. Masaki was about to release him. Then Tsunayoshi added. Besides, if I could actually see through everything. Do you really think your arm would stop me? Masaki's grip tightened again. Chapter 6. The Mysterious Shop. Stop messing around, Masaki. Tsunayoshi, right? Can you point out the location of the still silver? Ryukin asked. Tsunayoshi rubbed his already reddened cheek and shot Masaki, who looked rather pleased with herself, a glare before replying. Sure. The demon lens of Demon Spade turned toward Kane lying on the bed. Instantly, her body became translucent. What appeared before Ryukin was a complete network of human veins, and within that network were 3 glowing points, the still silver Tsunayoshi had mentioned. This was exactly what Tsunayoshi had seen through the demon lens earlier. Now, using the mirror's power, he cast an illusion upon Kane, recreating the scene he had witnessed so Ryukin could observe it. Seeing the still silver with his own eyes, Ryukin's expression turned grave. The fragments were moving somewhat quickly. There was no way to remove them at fixed points. The operation would have to be dynamic. So, Ryukin, how is it? Are you confident? Masaki asked. For once, she wasn't joking. Ryukin reached out to touch the location of the still silver, but his hand passed right through it, as if grasping empty air. He turned to Tsunayoshi. Tsunayoshi awkwardly scratched his nose. Strictly speaking, what you're seeing right now is just my illusion. You can't actually touch Aunt Kane. In that case, surgery can't be performed in this state, Ryukin said calmly. Can you simulate a reference target beside her using your illusion? With a reference point, Ryukin was confident he could complete the surgery while simultaneously observing the still silver's movement. I can't. My illusion has to be cast on a specific target for it to work. Tsunayoshi felt helpless. The mirror's main ability was perception, seeing through things. Illusions were merely a secondary function and could only transform a single target. What if you use me as the target? Masaki suggested, pointing at herself. I can lie beside her. Put the illusion on me so Ryukin can perform the surgery on Kane. Tsunayoshi looked her up and down. That could work, but differences in body shape might cause slight deviations. Is that acceptable? No. Ryukin pushed up his glasses with absolute confidence. The still silver fragments are extremely small. I'm probably the only one capable of removing them. In all of Karakura town, there isn't a second person confident enough to perform this surgery. There can be no margin of error. Unless you can find someone whose height and build are exactly the same as both of them. Just as Tsunayoshi and Ryukin were racking their brains, Masaki suddenly snapped her fingers. A body with identical proportions? That might actually be possible. She grinned. Ryukin, don't forget where my husband came from. A body that perfectly matches the soul, couldn't that be used to create an identical copy? Ryukin immediately understood. Kurosaki Ishin, being a Shinigami, was fundamentally a soul. In order to live normally in the human world, he had to inhabit an artificial body called a jugai. And a jugai could be made to look exactly like its user. Cancel the illusion, Tsunayoshi, Ryukin said. Unlike Masaki, Ryukin wasn't frivolous. The abilities Tsunayoshi had demonstrated were already enough to earn his respect. Leaning down beside the bed, Ryukin spoke softly to Kane. You heard everything just now. Do you trust me? Kane smiled faintly. You know I do. I always have. While the two shared a quiet moment, Masaki dragged Tsunayoshi aside with a mischievous grin. Little Tsuna, you don't mind staying over at Auntie's house tonight, right? Tsunayoshi understood immediately. Masaki wanted to use the excuse to cover for him with Sawada Nana. Fortunately, Tsunayoshi visited the Kurosaki residence often enough that the excuse wouldn't seem suspicious. After receiving his nod, Masaki excitedly called Nana. Her explanation was simple. Tsunayoshi and Ichigo had played until they fell asleep. The rain was too heavy tonight, so Tsunayoshi would stay over. All settled. Masaki flashed a victory sign at Tsunayoshi. Then she turned to Ryukin. Ryukin, let's head out now. We'll go straight to the shop. I'll call Ishin and have him meet us there. All right. Let's move. Ryukin grabbed a bag, lifted Kane onto his back, and pushed open the window of his house, clearly preparing to jump out. Wait, we're not driving? Tsunayoshi asked. There were 2 patients here. Were they seriously just going to run out into the rain? The rain makes visibility poor, and driving would be too slow. Ryukin replied matter-of-factly. Didn't you come flying here too? He gathered Reisher beneath his feet, forming a thin membrane above himself and Kane. The raindrops were completely deflected. Tsunayoshi was left speechless. Masaki poked his cheek. Look at Ryukin. Little Tsuna, you wouldn't let Aunt Masaki get soaked in the rain, would you? Faced with someone older shamelessly acting cute, Tsunayoshi had no real defense. Green light wrapped around the demon lens, transforming into a cloak that covered both of them. The first Vangala's cloak. Now that's a good item, Masaki said happily while riding on Tsunayoshi's back. You should have taken that out earlier. Andy got soaked for quite a while. Tsunayoshi silently apologized. He never imagined that the cloak of the Vangala Primo, embodying the all-embracing sky flame, capable of purifying, devouring, and containing everything, would be used for the first time as a raincoat. I'll call Ishin. At the Kurosaki residence, once Ishin heard that Masaki might be in mortal danger, he immediately grabbed his car keys and rushed for the door. Halfway there, he suddenly turned back, grabbed a large bag from inside the house, and then dashed out again. Above Karakura town, 2 groups moved rapidly through the curtain of rain. The group behind emitted flashes of green light with each step, their movements slightly stuttering each time they advanced. This was the recoil of bringer light. The group ahead was different. Blue light constantly gathered beneath their feet. Their path was perfectly straight, and their speed was astonishing. The distance between the 2 groups quickly widened. So that's the Hirankyaki used by Quincy, impressive. Tsunayoshi sighed while racing forward. He was already going all out, yet he still couldn't catch up to Ishida Ryukin. Of course, Ryukin's superior strength played a role, but the advantages of Hirankyaki were undeniable. Hirankyaki was a high-speed movement technique used by Quincy. By concentrating Reisher beneath their feet, they allowed the Reisher itself to propel them forward, like wearing a pair of high-speed shoes. Simply put, Hirankyaki was like skating, while Bringer Light was more like explosive jumping. Under equal conditions, Hirankyaki was naturally faster. What's wrong? Feeling jealous, little Tsuna? Masaki teased from his back. If you want to learn, ask Ryukin to teach you. It's the signature technique of the Quincy. Of course I want to learn it. Tsunayoshi replied matter-of-factly. Aren't you afraid of Oswalin? Masaki asked softly, her tone suddenly subdued. The emptiness of losing one's power wasn't something easily forgotten. Oswalin isn't omnipotent, Tsunayoshi said. Look at that uncle's son, he's also a mixed-blood Quincy, yet nothing happened to him. Yuryu? He's already started training as a Quincy? Masaki asked in surprise. Just because his father didn't teach him doesn't mean nobody did, Tsunayoshi replied. Then he asked, By the way, Aunt Masaki, do you plan to let Ichigo become a Quincy? Masaki pouted. Of course not. What's the point of fighting and killing? I want Ichigo to live a normal life. If he becomes a Quincy, he'll have to worry about things like Oswalin. Masaki truly feared Oswalin. In her mind, if Ichigo never gained any power, he would never attract its attention. What she didn't know was that Ichigo had already caught Aizen's attention. There was no way his life would ever remain ordinary. Nor did she know that Ichigo himself belonged to the group that Oswalin could not affect. Tsunayoshi said nothing more. He respected the choices of other people's parents. He made a decision: unless Ichigo personally sought him out for power, he wouldn't guide him in awakening the abilities inside him. After all, Ichigo would still obtain his powers eventually, and even defeat Yawach 3 years later. There was no need to rush. Soon, Tsunayoshi spotted their destination. In the middle of a small clearing stood an unassuming little shop. This was the place Masaki had brought them to. Urahara's shop. Once the captain of the 12th Division of the Godai 13, Urahara Kisuke had opened this store in the human world after being forced to leave Soul Society. He was also one of the greatest producers of black technology in the entire Shinigami world. If you needed some bizarre or mysterious gadget, chances were Urahara could pull it out of nowhere. Just as Tsunayoshi landed, a small truck screeched to a stop beside them. A man in a loud floral shirt jumped out. Kurosaki Isshin. Since the Kurosaki home was closer, he had arrived almost at the same time as them. Before Isshin could even check Masaki's condition, the door of the shabby old shop creaked open. Standing there was a man wearing a green and white striped bucket hat, holding a folding fan that covered half his face. He wore a dark green coat and trousers. With an exaggerated and somewhat sleazy tone, he said, Oh my. I was just thinking the sky seemed a bit clearer tonight. Turns out we have honored guests visiting. The pouring rain behind him proved he was talking nonsense. This man was Urahara Kisuke. Kisuke, cut the chatter, we need your help, Isshin shouted. He scooped Masaki up in a princess carry and rushed straight into the shop. His reckless charge forced Urahara to hurriedly step aside. But when he saw Kane's pale face on Ryuken's back, Urahara immediately realized the situation was serious. Inside the reception room of Urahara's shop, a muscular middle-aged man with a small braid was serving tea to Tsunayoshi and the others. His name was Tsukabashi Tezai, the former captain of the Kido Corps in Soul Society. His mastery of Kido was unfathomably deep. Beside Tsunayoshi stood 2 children about his age. The girl, Tsumuji Yururu, wore twin ponytails and looked quiet and gentle. The boy, Hanakari Jinta, was the complete opposite. With bright red hair and an energetic personality, he had already nicknamed Tsunayoshi, Spiky Head, the moment they met. Soon Urahara returned with Isshin and Ryuken. Masaki and Kane had been settled in another room. Masaki had fiercely resisted being treated like a patient, but once Isshin realized her energetic demeanor was merely forced bravado, he sternly ordered her to lie down and rest. So this is the young man who's been quite active over the past year, Urahara said dramatically as he entered. A sharp glint flickered in his eyes. Urahara had been stationed in Karakura town for years. Naturally, he had long sensed Sawada Tsunayoshi's Ryatsu. But since Tsunayoshi had done nothing dangerous, and was even helping eliminate hollows, Urahara had chosen not to intervene. Nice to meet you. I'm Sawada Tsunayoshi. Tsunayoshi introduced himself. Well then, Mr. Tsunayoshi, Urahara said with a smile, could you explain the situation in detail, and what exactly you need from me? The information Ryukin and Ishin had given him about Oswalin earlier was incomplete. The best way to understand the matter was clearly to hear it directly from Tsunayoshi. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated in Bleach as Tsunayoshi Sawada. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.